Great. Hi, everybody. So we are live. This is with Jack and with Ceci. I'm going to read their bios. Come join on as you see fit. I'm really excited about speaking with the both of you, especially like at the tail end. The last time I spoke with you, Jack, it was about a year ago when we were at like the beginning of the pandemic and with everything that had been happening. And now I feel like this is a little bit full circle with sort of a new world, a new way of relating to one another somehow. And now, at least it seems to me, we're about to start coming out into the world differently, similar but differently. And so I want to hear your thoughts about it, and I want to talk about your book. So first, let me talk a little bit about the authors, both Ceci and Jack. So Jack Elias has studied and practiced Buddhism since 1967, first with Zen teacher Suzuki Roshi, then with Buddhist teachers Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. Did I say that right? Great.
Rinpoche.
And Dzogchen Ponlap Rinpoche.
Rinpoche.
Thank you. And hypnotherapist and NLP trainer since 1988. Jack is known for his smart, boisterous humor and for distilling profound insights into simple techniques anyone can practice with lasting results, positive results. Ceci Miller, Jack's wife, is a longtime meditator and a student of Buddhism with Dzogchen Ronlap Rinpoche.
Dzogchen Ponlap Rinpoche.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Since 2005, an author, communications consultant, and trainer, Ceci is a certified instructor of the emotional rescue method, which I am interested to hear about myself also. She has written, edited, and consulted on a wide variety of social and emotional learning, SEL publications for both adults and children. Welcome, welcome. Thrilled to have you. You know what, since I actually brought that up, do you want to speak just a little bit about emotional rescue method before we jump into the book?
Oh, it's Emotional Rescue Courses is a new initiative that we've just started. And so It's a little bit in flux, but the best way to know about that is to go to emotionalrescue.info and subscribe to the list.
Great.
And if I knew you were going to ask me that, I would have prepared the link to that. But there's a way to subscribe on that site and get updates because the new courses are being developed.
Great. I'm looking forward to hearing about it and reading about it and learning about it because it sounds super on point right now. So first I wanted to say, when I was reading this book, Jack, I felt overwhelmingly like I get teary-eyed thinking about it and feeling about it, like genuinely, like as though you were like, I have all of this wisdom and know-how. How do I pour it out so that I can help people and genuinely assist and support people in getting out of the circuitous suffering that's unnecessary and unneeded? And how do I literally felt that as a gift from your own heart as I was reading this book. And I don't know if that's true or not, but it felt like that to me when I was reading it.
Oh, thank you. That's great.
And the other thing,
you made this book, right?
Yes. Smart Alec, you. Smart ass, you. Yes, the book. You're the outrageous guide to being fully alive, defeat your inner trolls, and reclaim your sense of humor. The sense of humor that Jack just showed right now. This is great. Yes. And as I was saying before, that I also felt like it was, I've read some of your other writings and your other books, and this one felt like I could feel you, Ceci, in it, and I could hear you in it differently than I had in the other books. Do you want to share a little bit about what it was like to collaborate on this one and why this book right now?
Oh, well, we've been working on this together for a few years, and I really only considered myself Jack's editor. But as things progressed, and he gave me lots of latitude, and so I would add things and rewrite, and it turned out to be more of a collaboration than either of us had anticipated. And when we got to the point of bringing it out as a book, this book, Jack said to me, well, I think you should be a co-author. And I thought, oh, now, sort of bent my head around it. I thought I have to rethink this whole this whole thing now. But why now is because this is when we had decided to bring it out. And we were grateful that the timing was what it was, because there was a tremendous dearth of joy and a tremendous suffering happening, which intensified all of the issues that we have written about in the book, and that we felt, this can really bring a sense of joyful possibility at a time when people are feeling quite down and very discouraged. So that's why now.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Jack, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I am always delighted and surprised when I give her my draft that I think is brilliant and clear, and she makes changes that bring it alive, make it more colorful, richer, and more clear.
Yes.
So I'm always very appreciative of that.
Yes, but in what you just said is actually like rich in and of itself. Like someone who has not read your book might take some of that stuff personally. Like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Like start going into their head and start actually being offended. Or so let's jump into the book and talk about like the tools and the ways in which we can work with the inner troll, the part of our brain that makes life with ourselves challenging and makes life with others challenging as well, right? You just talked about something that could have easily been an argument or a fight, and it wasn't. It was something that you were like, I didn't realize that was actually a better idea. Why don't you do this? It was collaborative. It was an invitation. It was more interesting together than as opposed to just you doing it yourself. So let's just jump in. There's a couple of things that I really, really love that I want to talk about, but for people, and then I will in a little bit, but let's follow this thought. For those of us who find ourselves in a bad neighborhood in our head sometimes, right? All of a sudden we've like turned some sort of like psychological corner in our brain. And all of a sudden it's like we're in treacherous waters. I'm mixing metaphors. Like, what is a good way what's an effective way? What's a good way to actually, when a negative thought or the regular tapes of "you're a jerk, you did that so stupidly, I can't believe what an idiot you are," like that kind of thing rears its ugly head. What do you think is, and this is stuff that you talk about in the book, but let's talk about it here. What are the ways in which we can counter that and actually have a much more peaceful, loving relationship with ourselves?
Okay.
Who wants to take that on?
We can both take it on. There's, there's a lot of different levels of competency to do that. So I think one of the most accessible would be to write down the troll, write down a repetitive negative put down statement, and then create a response that is self-affirming, and write them both down over and over and over and over and over again, such that you create a link that every time the negative one comes up, the positive one comes up and nullifies it. So that would be a kind of a mechanical beginning way. At the other end of the spectrum would be to genuinely recognize it's just a thought. There's nobody in there, and it's not about you. Even if your name is in there, or even if the pronoun I, me, or my is in there, it's just sounds. Now, it's simple to say that, but that's a very advanced competency for people to have, to be genuinely non-reactive and stay open and spacious and just see thought or a
Yeah.
feeling, which is more compelling, to just let them come and go without getting stuck in them.
Yeah. You're talking about it from like a meditator's like sitting stance where you just notice the noise, the sound, the words of it, and just let it float by. At least that's what the experience I had when you were talking about that. It's sort of like just notice it like you would thoughts during your meditation, which, by the way, in your book, you talk about all the different ways. Like there's a good chunk of it, not a huge chunk of it, but there's a good chunk of it that's dedicated to how we sit, why we sit, the purpose of it, what kind of influence it has on our minds and our nervous systems, which I think is like key to actually coming into, and I put this in quotes, right relationship to ourselves, so that we could actually start noticing the things inside of us that are influencing our emotions and our feelings and our thoughts and our opinions about ourselves and our opinions about the world and about our experience, if that makes sense.
Well, absolutely. I think that meditation is the best tool that I know of to develop the ability to watch your thoughts. Yes. And so what Jack is recommending, where you start to look at these thoughts rather than just believe them. That's normally what we do. Mm-hmm. A thought comes up and it says some kind of mean message like that, whether we're in the scary waters or bad neighborhood or whatever it is, we just believe it. And we begin spinning additional thoughts that run in line with that.
Yeah.
And then it's a big deal.
Yeah. So, there's something that I read in the book that for me, I tend to slow myself down a bit. But there was something in the book that I read that I thought was brilliant. And it gave me something to latch onto so that I could slow myself down quicker and catch it before it was even at level 3. Like it actually helped me catch it at level 1. And it's a brilliant distinction, which is, the moment when we go, I feel like I did something so dumb. Or I feel like, I might not have done that. I love the distinction that you gave, which is anytime you say, I feel like blah, 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 it's not a feeling. It's a belief you have that is influencing how you're feeling. So to actually break those two things up, delineate those things, differentiate those things so that we have more sovereignty and like ability to witness our mind and be more, what's the word I'm looking for? Where, like, take for instance, if I'm walking around going, I feel so stupid for having done that.
Great example.
Yeah. Which we, like, a lot of us do that, maybe not the both of you, but a lot of us will walk around being like, I just feel, no, I have a belief that I did something, I don't know, embarrassing, foolish, that wasn't the right way to do things. That there was a wrong way to do it and I did the wrong, like I have this belief. And that belief is influencing how I'm feeling in that moment. And the feeling I might be having based on the belief I just made up, right, is I'm so embarrassed. But even that is not 100% accurate either. Because that's tied into, I believe there's a right way to do this. There is no right way to do this. There's just how I did it. And how I did it was perfect. It was the first time I did it. Look at me, all the courage I had in doing that for the first time. Like that's a really quick slowdown and then reframe of the thing that all of a sudden, instead of it being like, all of a sudden I'm like, hey, I did pretty good in that moment. I just thought that was a really brilliant tool for slowing a brain that is accustomed to going down a particular groove, well-worn groove. So that was one of those tools that I just was like, I love tools like that I can literally take and use in real time. Is there anything else that you want to say about that?
Yeah. I have this paradigm called the 13 types of confusion that create all of our needless suffering. And this book addresses those without naming them explicitly sometimes. But the first one, the root one that we get indoctrinated into as a child is, well, first of all, confusion. If you look at the word, as con means with, fusion means pour together. So you get a state of confusion anytime you pour things together that don't go together. And the root confusion from which all the others arise is fusing, pouring together worth of being with competency of your activity.
Yes.
And we get that thousands of times before the age of 7, and why that's significant is that before the age of 7, we don't have a critical capacity to reject anything. So we think we're being taught laws of the universe, like the fact that I spilled my milk 3 times and my mommy hit me. That's a law of the universe. I deserve to be hit. If you spill your milk, you deserve to be hit, and you're not worth loving. That's fusing being and activity. And it's not, strictly speaking, activity per se, but the experience of constantly having your activities judged, and that the judgment of your activity determines the worth of your being.
Yes.
And we get that so deeply ingrained before we get a cognitive faculty.
Yes.
Around the age of 7, that the cognitive faculty has a powerful prohibition against undoing it. It's like, don't you dare look there.
Yes.
So we use, even if you have a brilliant cognitive faculty, you're going to use it in the outer world. You're going to create success or fame or money or whatever. And I'm sure you know, and we read about people all the time who they should be, materialistically, they're masters of the universe, but emotionally, they're a wreck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you can develop all of that competency in the outer world and never turn it towards unraveling those confusions that are causing you to maintain self-hatred.
Yes.
And blame and guilt and shame. So that's the first one, fusing being with activity. The second one is fusing thoughts with feelings, so that you can't distinguish between the two, which is what you're talking about, saying, I feel like I'm stupid. That's not a feeling, that's a thought. It's a judgment. And when you break them, then you can recognize, when I believe that judgment, I feel this. And not fight that, but recognize it's a judgment. Then you can just very open-mindedly, in a very friendly way, say, maybe you're right. Maybe I am stupid. But it's only fair you show me the evidence before I generate this hurtful feeling.
Yeah.
So you put in your energy into inquiring into what's the evidence, instead of just immediately putting your energy into generating painful feelings.
Yes, I love so much of what you're saying, and it's funny, it's like a rose by any other name would still smell sweet. The way you speak about this, I speak about it a little differently. I talk about rightness. It's like I'm just because I may have done something doesn't mean, like, done something off, doesn't make me as a person off.
Right.
Yeah.
Just because my behavior may not have been on the mark or might have not been great, it doesn't mean that I'm off the mark as a being, or that I'm not great. Like, it doesn't affect who I just because I did something, quote, wrong, doesn't mean that I as a being am wrong or bad. And that's what I equate to my own personal rightness in the world. Like, my rightness and my sense of self doesn't get affected just because of, like, I'm a human being and doing the best I can, just like everybody else. I can be a responsible person and say, oh yeah, I can appreciate how that landed with you. And I can really get like I can have a conversation about that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm the biggest piece of shit that ever walked the face of the earth. Those two things are not one and the same.
No.
Not even close.
No, no.
We talk about the preciousness, the essential preciousness of each person's being. That's inviolable. It's not up for debate. It just is the case. And anybody who's ever met a baby knows this is true. Right?
There's this woman, yeah, sorry, go ahead, please.
That's us.
Yeah, there's this, what you're saying is exciting me so much that I'm speaking over you, and I don't mean to. I'm so excited that I'm like, yes, yes, yes. So please finish your thought.
No, it's just, that helps me often with in difficult situations, because in addition to having trouble sometimes remembering my own preciousness, my own valuable nature, which is not up for debate, same is true for everybody else. And so if someone's behaving in a way that I don't like, or really even doing violence in the world, I can still remember that that being has a core of goodness and kindness, is really covered up right now. But it doesn't help to focus on that, just like it doesn't help for us to focus on that in ourselves when it comes up. When we make a mistake, we do harm, we hurt someone's feelings, or hurt someone's heart. So it's a helpful reminder.
Yeah. A couple of things come to mind in what you're saying. There's a woman who I'm going to shout out. Her name is Reverend Joanne Coleman. She's wonderful, but she talks about how, imagine if you're you're more than this, but if you're $1,000 bill, imagine you have $1,000 bill. You can crumple that bill up, you can run it over with the car, you can sort of like put dirt on it, mud on it, but the value of that $1,000 bill never changes. It's still worth $1,000.
That's a great one.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Especially for us Americans.
Yes. I thought, given that we're in a capitalist age and we're talking about money, that actually lands in a certain way. And then also the other thing that it reminded me of, two things I wanted to say was, for me, I've going back to what you were saying, Jack, about how up until you're 7 years old, you're basically like a blank slate. You're just a sponge looking for the mirror to tell you who you are on a certain level, because we don't really know. That's my interpretation of it, and so whatever messages we've gotten in that time, but it's not just messages, whatever's happened, because this is what I tell my own clients. What happens to us, there are things that happen to us that are at times painful. Like, there are genuine events in life that are tragic and that affect us deeply. Yes. I don't have to tell you both that, like, you've had that, right? But what happens to us and the meaning we make of what happens to us are two different things, and those two things get collapsed all the time.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Yes. And so if I was a child, which I was, that had like sort of dramatic things happened, and I make it mean I'm not worth loving. Mm-hmm. It's the meaning I bring to it that is the issue that needs to be uncovered, and sort of the poison of that needs to be taken out. Right. So that I could actually feel whatever real feelings there are about what happened are genuine, real feelings about what happened. But that's separate from the neuroses, and I am going to use like the neuroses of like, okay, I got to make sure that I don't do that again, and then so like the sort of treadmill of that gets developed after that. And the other thing I was thinking about was how you were talking about with people who are very, very successful, but the inside context for the content and intention are everything. So if my intention is I'm going to prove to the world how not a piece of shit I am,
Yeah, that works out so well.
Well, no matter what I do in the world, even if I'm like become a millionaire or a billionaire and I gather all the toys and the things inside, I will never get enough evidence to prove to myself that I'm not the biggest piece of shit in the world.
Right. The best you can hope for in that scenario is to be a really, really wealthy piece of shit.
Which, by the way, given the choices, I'd much rather be a very, very wealthy piece of shit.
Whoa. But you know what you're pointing out is really true. It's like, what's the basis? What's the motivation of our activity?
Yes.
You know, if our activity is all about proving that we're not a creep, I'm not a jerk, you know, because look, all the things I did, it doesn't work fundamentally because we're not a jerk to begin with. So we're running around needlessly, you know, engaged in activity for the wrong reasons. And the only way that we're really going to get happy about our activity is that when our activity is beneficial and meaningful.
Yes.
That's just the way we're wired.
Yes, beneficial and meaningful in a way that's, I want to suss that out and pull that apart a little bit, because it's like beneficial and meaningful in a way that serves not just our own ego gratification, but like it's, I hate using this like win-win, but that where people actually like, because I could go, I'm doing this thing for you. See it? See it? I'm doing this thing. Aren't I great? Aren't I? Come on, tell me how about, like, that's actually, then you're like, okay, you're great. You know, that doesn't necessarily serve as well as you like give it away. And then who benefits, and who does, it's not about you, you know? So what you're speaking to is, and that's, okay, so here's something, because these are really great ideas. They've been around forever. And we always, I feel like we're always sort of looking at it, cutting at it, being at it, talking about it from constantly different angles and new ways. It's like the same symphony being played by different, you know, maestros and different musicians, do you know? Hoping that like something will land a little bit differently with each person. There's something that I read, and I've got my notes here. One of my other favorite things that I remember reading in the book was the structure or the idea that worry is negative prayer, that they both share. I loved that idea, that they both share the same like basic template. Can you please speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah.
That's Jack Elias.
So what you were saying about people, all of this stuff is very familiar and people keep coming at it and trying to grasp it. It occurred to me in trying to communicate with students and clients, seeing them do that, that it's valuable to understand that language is inherently hypnotic. That hypnosis is not, because I teach hypnosis and I do hypnosis and people think hypnosis is a thing, a particular thing. Even hypnotherapists think it's a particular thing, being in a hypnotic trance versus being in your conscious mind. But the thing I, from my Buddhist training, recognized is that the conscious mind is a hypnotic construct. It's hypnosis all the time. That when you were talking about beliefs, a belief is just a suggestion. The essence of hypnosis is suggestion. So forget the word hypnosis and just recognize that our constant stream of internal dialogue is one suggestion after another. You know, it's like, you dumb shit. That's a suggestion. You don't have to agree to it.
You don't have to actually go to that party, even though there's been an invite.
You can say, thanks for sharing, no thanks, you know, that it's all just suggestions. And it's really important to understand the nature of the wholesomeness of our being is that, one way to talk about it is that any being in a sane state of mind does not attack itself. So all of these attacking thoughts are insane thoughts. And because when we are genuinely ourselves, we don't have insane thoughts, they are literally thought viruses
Yeah.
that have infected us. And in the same way that physical viruses affect us, mainly because they can cloak themselves as self so that the immune system won't attack them the way it attacks a bacteria, because they go there and it says, hey, we're the same. You're me, I'm you. And so they don't get attacked. Same thing with thought viruses. They cloak themselves with the simplest of things. I, me, my, and your name. You have a thought with one of those words in there, you just let it in. You think it's your thought. I hate myself. How many times have you said that or hear people say, I hate myself? No, that's a thought virus. You don't hate yourself. You're accepting the suggestion to do the activity of hating. It's not your true thought.
And it's habit, like an addictive habit.
Yeah.
A familiar addictive habit that people have.
Because we get trained in it thousands of times before the age of 7. So then it becomes, we have an intuitive sense that it's reality as opposed to deluded thoughts.
Yes. This is brilliant. I was thinking about when you were sharing about this, that it's a little bit, you know how like cancer cells actually kill, like suddenly turn on its own host and starts to kill, and then it produces. And I started thinking about how those thoughts are like cancer cells that attract other cancer cells that are created in such a way where it starts to try to kill off the host. And the more we invest and believe and give energy and attention and validity to those, what you were talking about, virus or cancer, it's like the more that happens. Suddenly I lost you for a second. The more that happens, the more real and true it feels.
And the mistake that we make is that we forget that we're the ones in charge of this virus.
Yes.
We gave birth to it, and we can stop it right where it stands.
Yes.
It doesn't have to continue multiplying until it takes over our mind and our body and our life and everything we do. Yes. But we think, because of the power of repetition, of having repeated this to ourselves over and over again, and in a kind of a hypnotic way, with a lot of, giving it a lot of importance and a lot of emotion, and there's a lot of drama that gets stirred up, that if we never allow that drama and all of that emotion to cool down so that we can see that that's what's happening, then we don't perceive that we have a choice.
Yes.
We always do have a choice, though.
Yeah, what you're talking about is in the experience of what you're speaking, there is a seamlessness to that circle. And like there's literally no beginning or end. It feels like true. And we can point to evidence in our life that makes it true.
Yeah.
Like it's literally the seamless. I love the word hypnotic, addictive. Our nervous systems are wired, our brains are like, everything is wired to see, feel, experience, believe, all of that. So it's a seamless experience. And so what I'm hearing you all saying and suggesting, and in the book, it's purposely like this, where there's a kind, loving tools to interrupt the seamlessness of that. So that at any point you stop the train that's left the station and is going at 100 miles per hour and just doing life. And there's all these ways in which we just like stop the train or consider something else or halt the process of that addiction and that hypnosis.
Right, because it's not seamless.
It's not.
It is because it's constantly, doing itself over and over again. Jack has this method called break state that he talks about. It's a great example of what you're pointing to, you know, practicing breaking state, you know.
Speak a little bit to that. That's, I mean, you do it in different ways in the book. There are ways that you like, so like you literally interrupt that process that seems seamless to us.
Right.
Yeah.
So you interrupt it by just looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like often I'll use the image with people. You're on the platform at the train station. You just have a habit of thinking if a train pulls up, you have to get on. You don't have to get on. You know, and a train of thought is just a train of thought. Even if it's got an I, me, my, or your name in it, you don't have to get on it. Those are just words. Yeah. You know, your name is not who you are. It's just a useful auditory tool to get your attention.
Yeah.
But if your name is plastered on the side of a train of thought, you say, oh, I got to get on there. Got to go with it. You don't.
Yes.
So that's the root breaking of state, is to just let them come and go. Now, it sounds easy, and people look at their thoughts and it sounds easy, but the where the challenge is with feeling energy.
Yeah.
Because that's in the body, quote unquote. And when you feel stuff in the body, it's a very strong pull to identify that this is me, this is happening to me, as opposed to recognizing this is just happening. To recognizing that feelings don't have a storyline. They're not about you, they're not attacking you, they don't diminish you. Those are all the hypnotic suggestions of stories that we have learned to lightning fast attach to the feeling energy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So one of the best interruptions is to practice seeing trains of thought, relaxing and seeing trains of thought, and more challenging, relaxing. And it doesn't mean like mechanical, physical relaxing. It means more like just welcoming and breathing as best you can, welcoming and breathing into painful movements of emotional energy, refraining from buying into the storyline.
Yeah.
Because we have a powerful hypnotic suggestion that if it's intense, that means it's real. Meaning that means all the judgments are real. No, intensity and the naive subconscious mind has the mentality of a young child before the age of 7, and it determines reality by vividness, not by actual evidence. So if you have an intense emotional feeling, you have a habit of validating that intense emotional feeling means whatever you're thinking is true.
Yes.
But it's not.
Because emotions are physical events, and we identify very strongly with our bodies. This is me. If this goes away, I'm not here anymore.
And that's a story.
That's a story, though.
Don't need it.
This reminds me of a story that I remember being in a course once, and someone got up this, and I've thought of this story a number of times. That he was learning how to fly a plane. This is the short version. He was learning how to fly a plane. The person who was teaching him basically said, "You're going to see a lot of funky things up in the air. Sometimes you're going to experience weird things. Just keep your eye on the controls. The controls will always tell you what's real. Just keep your eyes on the controls."
Yeah. Great metaphor.
So he like became a pilot on his own, and he was flying one day, and he flew through a bank of enormous cumulus clouds. He couldn't see for about 20 minutes, just basically. And his body told him overwhelmingly that the plane was flying suddenly sideways. And he was like in a cold sweat, but he was looking at his controls, and the controls were like, no, you're flying straight. But everything in his system was like, it's sideways, straighten the plane, straighten the plane, straighten the plane. He finally flew out of the clouds, and the world righted itself suddenly.
Wow.
And I think about that, and I think when I'm having overwhelming feelings, well, I'm convinced that the plane is flying sideways.
Yes.
Just like I ask, so for me, my idea is like to ask better questions. Is this true? Mm-hmm. Where is it in my body? Could it be that I'm like, I just start to ask better questions just to separate myself a little bit from what my body has been triggered, whatever has triggered my body that is telling me that the plane is flying sideways.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, even if the plane metaphorically is flying sideways, me responding from a place of hysteria will not help anything.
Not usually.
No, it's not, I've never like found that to be the case. So I like love, I just love what you're saying, and it's simple but not easy.
Well, it takes practice.
Yes.
You know, it takes practice to be experiencing something that is vividly uncomfortable physically.
Yes.
And not build a story, which is our habit to do. And so we kind of have to start with the simpler things, the smaller upsets. Yeah. You know, it's not even kind to ourselves to expect us to sort of have mastered, you know, our deepest kind of rooted anger and to be able to avoid reactivity instantly. Yes. You know, it's more helpful to say, well, you know, I'm going to try this with, you know, when they don't have my favorite muffin at the coffee shop, as my teacher says, you know, start there, you know, and then you can build practice, but it's not easy in the beginning.
No, it's like I tell people, like, it's like going to the gym. You don't start with 100 pounds, you start with the 5 pounds. Yeah. And then you literally work your muscle up to eventually the 100-pound will feel like the 5-pound, but you don't go to the 100-pound and then think you're a failure because you didn't really do it right or whatever. I agree. Absolutely. It's unkind and not in resonance to where we actually are in any given moment. But there's something about what you're also talking about, which is a commitment to, I don't want to use the John Bradshaw, like, I don't want to use like, but there is a way in which we're growing ourselves up, like, you know, like reparenting ourselves or growing ourselves up in that moment, where instead of that sort of like angry child that's having a tantrum inside of us, slowing ourselves down and going through that challenging process is very much like, all right, I'm going to stop blaming the world for not doing what I want in that moment and having my tantrum like a child. And
I think what you're pointing to is really a lot about empathy too. You know, yes. We talk a lot in the book about being kind to yourself and having empathy for yourself. And it's just something that nobody ever really suggests to you generally. Unless you've had that example given to you of someone being extremely kind and patient with you when you've made a mistake or you've harmed another child or something like that, then you don't have a context that says, I'm still worth, you know, I'm still worth being here. I'm still fine, but I made a mistake and everybody makes them. And now what can I do, you know?
The reframing, there's a lot of different areas in the book where you reframe things in the gray, where instead of like, there are a lot of different ways where the suggestion or the outright thing of like, I may have not done that perfectly, but I'm still a courageous person for like, it's reframing it so that instead of I'm the best thing that ever walked the face of the earth, or I'm the biggest piece of shit that walked the face of the earth. It's like that black and white thinking completely lacks the reality that we are fallible humans doing the best we can in a world that is at times challenging. Like, we are fallible and perfect at the same time.
Yeah, our being is perfect, but our activities are a learning curve. So that's how we learn, is by making mistakes.
Yes. And so there's all these different ways that there's all reframing that happens that you talk about in the book, where it's like, I may have done this, but I'm still a good person, or I've still done the best I could, or that was courageous, or like anything. And I remember a long time ago when I was learning my own like gray in between the extreme black and white that I had personally inside my own life, that learning how to because that was my entryway into self-forgiveness. I didn't have a language internally for how to bring more kindness and understanding to myself. It had never been shown over here. So for me, just that language, oh, I can actually have both of those exist in my mind and give me breath to be a person. It sounds simple. And yet if it's missing, like if you're blind and you're blind to your own blindness, you are blind.
Now, someone has to suggest it to you at some point, that you're worthwhile and essentially wonderful and fine, even when you've made the worst mistake you can imagine, and what's a big mistake for somebody is no big deal for someone else. So we're all working with our own set of conditions, and it's in here. We're in charge. We're the ones who decide, but someone has to suggest to us at some point this beautiful idea. I think, one of the things I love that Jack uses frequently is it starts with even though.
Yes.
Even though I did X, Y, and Z, or I think this and that,
or I feel,
or
this or
even
that.
though I feel blah, 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 I love myself thoroughly and completely.
Yes. Yes. Or I'm even though I didn't do that as well as I hoped, I can see, I could see how courageous I was to do it, period. Even though I had my feelings hurt in that moment, I am still worth, respect, care, and love. The reframe of that as small and as, because when I'm working with people, what I find is that bridge, that gray, that gap in the middle, there's no, it's almost like neuronal pathways in there. Like that's actually one of those suggestions. I loved that idea in the book and how you actually put it throughout the whole entire book, in addition to other tools. Oh, there's something also that was really interesting. I have my notes. There's something else that I thought was really interesting. We especially nowadays, we have, like, I love the way you distinguish between psychological fear, like psychological fear / obsession, and like the genuine, real fear that is healthy. Because right now in this world, there's a lot of, things that are a little bit scarier. We see the news, there's stuff that happens all the time, violence, the stuff that's like how do we deal with that in ourselves? You talk about it in the book. You all, if you haven't gotten this book, you should get this book, order it. It's this it's like literally one of these things that's like easy to read. And it's one of those things that you have gems over and over and over again. And you can feel the love inside of it. Can you speak a little bit to how do we hold fear and not have it turn into unhealthy obsession?
You practice distinguishing between the feeling and the story. The story is psychological fear. And because we're steeped in story, which is ongoing hypnotic trance, our stories are hypnotic. We live in the melodrama of our scenarios. We're constantly triggering our capacity to pump adrenaline, which triggers the healthy fight or flight instinct. That's not fear. It's just the fight or flight instinct. You want to keep that, but you want to stop triggering it with psychological fear.
Yes.
Like an animal will trigger their fight or flight instinct if they're a deer and a tiger chases them. They're full of adrenaline and going, and their heart is pumping, just intense state. But if they escape, they go somewhere safe and they literally shake themselves and reset their biology. We don't do, and that's all, they don't have the capacity to imagine and recreate and dwell. So we misuse that tool.
Yes.
So instead of shaking ourselves and being done with an immediacy of events and circumstances and returning to equanimity, we can, wow, that was close. I hope that never happens again. What if it does happen? You know, we just keep hypnotizing ourselves, triggering our energy of survival instinct into perverting it into psychological fear, which is very draining.
Yes.
And doesn't help.
No, it doesn't have no at all. And by the way, if we're on, you know, I'll speak to those of the, like I had a life that had, where my system was pumped through. And so I was used to a high level, and I have worked over time to literally bring that down and be able to feel other things like amazing joy and like happiness and, you know, and love. And it's an amazing thing. But like I woke up this morning, it's interesting what you're talking about. I woke up this morning and I had that sort of like panicky fight or flight feeling. And I was like, for a moment, I was like, well, what's causing that? Which, by the way, might be at times not a great question, because your brain goes, oh, great, let's look for all the reasons why that might be happening. Do you know what I mean? And I realized that that was not helpful. And I went, no, that's not helpful. There's nothing happening that is any reason for why I'm feeling this way, like none. And so I literally just like, I mean, this is what I did. I asked better questions, and I basically just acknowledged the, you know, I have a system like a little child inside of me that just every once in a while is like, good things are happening. Is that okay? And I'm like, I understand that sometimes that's scary, but I'm here and I'm going to take care of the adult things. You can just like be over here. Like I just talk to myself a little differently inside of it, and don't necessarily like, you know, oh my God, you know, and lose my mind in a way that's not helpful. I don't know if that helps or if that was just me like sharing, but I understood what you were talking about, and that was like my own interpretation of it.
Yeah, it's very, very helpful to talk to yourself encouragingly with kindness and love. And, you know, and even if we don't have a lot of experience of being talked to with kindness and love, some people don't have a lot of experience of it. They don't really even know what that would sound like. You can try things out and see how they feel. I mean, you can really like talk to yourself in the mirror. You're doing great for somebody who went through all the stuff you went through.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I, you know, it's fine to give yourself little pep talks. I've done that myself many times.
Yes.
You know, like, you know, you're doing amazing.
Yep.
It's amazing what you're able to do given all the things you've gone through. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I think what you're saying points up another habit that we tend to have, which is we think that if we're upset, we have an emotional response to something, and, you know, we're upset, negative emotion, difficult emotion, we might call it. We think we have to do something about it, that there's something wrong. And that's a quick mistake we make all the time. And we could just feel, that's an instant story, and then it's getting going. So if we gain the ability to sort of have willingness to stay in a feeling state, even if it's uncomfortable, and do our best to relax the body and just recognize the simple truth that this is not me, this is a physical response I'm having, and just leave it there. And it takes lots of practice, but if we can do that, we don't have to try to counteract anything or stamp it out or fix it, you know, because it will play itself through.
Yeah.
Its own.
What I tell myself and the people who are clients and others, I tell this all the time, where it's like the moment, if I'm trying to fix, change, alter, like if I'm inside that habit, the moment I meet it and say, yes, we have to, the moment I say that's true, I make it true.
Right.
then all of a sudden, whatever problem I think there is that I have to fix becomes a true problem that I think I have to fix.
You accepted the suggestion.
Yeah, there is no problem. There's nothing to fix. Nothing.
I just thought of a new technique, though, based on what you were saying about relaxing the body and this other thing about shaking things up.
Yes.
Is that when emotional energy comes up, instead of trying to figure it out, and even if relaxing seems too challenging, you could, inhabit the energy and do the hokey pokey.
I do, yes. Yes. Oh my God. I love that you said, you literally, my husband sent me a video of prancercising, where it was this woman who was prancercising, and I went, oh my God, I'm going to prancercise whenever I'm just going to shake and prancercise. It brought me so much joy. Yes. Yes. Just shake, just literally shake it out.
Yes.
We literally, this has been such a fast hour. I sort of can't believe that this hour went by so fast. We've got a few minutes left. For me personally, it's just been an absolute pleasure to sit down and talk with you both, and to have a conversation that is not typical of our everyday conversations. It's like a slowing down of how we think. And so I wanted to ask if there was something that you wanted to, that I didn't ask, that you really wanted to leave people with, or if there was some sort of parting thing for now that you wanted to say.
Oh, very kind of you to ask. And we really appreciate your inviting us, and being here with you has been a delight. So, but you weren't going to say something.
Couple things. This just became available on Kindle on Amazon. The hard copy is at BookBaby, and we have those links on our pages. So I'm next month to have a webinar on the 13 types of confusion, but it's called Being Your Own Best Friend, the Advanced Class. So people can find out about that on my several different Facebook pages. There's links there. It's Institute for Therapeutic Learning is one page. Transpersonal Hypnosis and Hypnotherapy, NLP, maybe a little harder to remember or easier to remember. Hypnotic suggestion. That's another page.
JackElias.com is the easiest one.
JackElias.com. And my personal Facebook page, I put these notices of these events there too. So next month, May webinar, and you can email me if you've forgotten any of this at jack@jackelias.com and ask for the information.
And I would just say that, those 13 types of confusion that Jack was talking about, he alluded to earlier, this webinar is all about those, and he's going to go through each one. So it's very valuable. It's a really popular program of his. People ask for it over and over again because it's really, really helpful for doing the kinds of things that we talked about today, to try to pull those things apart and get a good look at what you're actually doing in there, in this mind.
Yes, that's great.
Inner environment.
And is there anything that you want to share about anything else? I know that you had talked about, I was interested in the emotional, what was it? Is there anything else?
Yes, very kind of you. Yes, it's emotionalrescue.info. It's all one word, emotionalrescue.info. And that website, if you subscribe to the list, you can get the newest information about emotional rescue courses. Those courses are based on the book by Dzogchen Pompo Rinpoche called Emotional Rescue: How to Transform Hurt and Confusion into Energy That Empowers You. It describes 3 very practical steps for working with emotions to transform them, so that they really do just become energy. You can reclaim your creative energy. You can reclaim your joyful sense of yourself. And it creates a tremendous sense of confidence to work with those tools that Rinpoche created. 2016 is when the book came out. The book is still available in several languages. And it's helped people all over the world to transmute their emotions and to work with. So if you want to work with emotions in a very specific way, that's a wonderful tool. So the courses they're in the process of changing a little bit in form. And so in May or June, they're going to take a new form. But you can get the news about that by subscribing on that website.
Great.
We would love to have you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like, I can't wait to find out about the 3 steps. I absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure. And for all of you who listen now or listen in the future, if you have questions, please reach out. Jack is always available. Ceci, I'm sure you can reach out as well via Jack, especially on Facebook. And you, of course, you could also reach out to me as well. Thank you for your time again. And adios, cógelo suave in Spanish. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.